All right, what up YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Another episode of the Crypto Breakdown. I am your host, Ryan Matta. Coin of the day, Kadena. Can this coin 2x, 5x, 10x? I definitely think so. I want to pull it up in the charts. I want to make some price predictions. I want to break down the tokenomics. I'm going to show you guys exactly why I'm so bullish on this coin. And then I have special guest, Doug Beardsley. He is the Director of Engineering at Kadena. He's extremely smart, extremely intelligent. In this interview, we're going to break down what are blockchains? What is the technology behind blockchains? How do layer 1 versus layer 2 blockchain works? Kadena is proof of work. So we're going to take a deep dive into proof of work versus proof of stake. Kadena is the first company that's actually figured out the blockchain trifecta, or the blockchain trilemma: decentralized, security, and speed. They have actually figured out how to scale a proof of work blockchain, which is absolutely mind-blowing. This reminds me of Solana. Like, this is a new Solana in the making to me. But I just want to be clear on one thing. Kadena is in no way, shape, or form connected to these price predictions. These price predictions are something I did post-interview. And the reason I'm putting them in this video is because it's going to help the growth of the overall video. And that's going to allow this video to reach a ton more people. And the main reason I want to do that is because there's so much good content, and you guys will learn so much about blockchain and blockchain technology in this interview. I hope everybody gets a chance to watch it. So if you guys could do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let's dive into it. Guess what? I'm not a financial advisor. I may have a plethora of crypto knowledge, but this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. You always need to do your own research. I do not advise that you buy, sell, hodl, trade, or invest in any cryptocurrency. And if you could do me a huge favor and hit that like button, turn on those post notifications, and smash that subscribe button, I would be greatly appreciative. And down in the description, you can always find chapter timelines in case you want to skip ahead, affiliate links, and links to my digital course. Now that we got the YouTube police off our back, let's dive in, let's get it. If you guys have saw my Kadena video that I made on September 14th when Kadena was $1.56, you can see right here on the screen that price target. I was calling for Kadena to $2.59. When I made that video, Kadena was sitting right down here at like $1.56. I was calling it to $2.59. Kadena ends up hitting a price point of $2.53. I then said that Kadena was going to retrace, and my key 3 retrace targets where I would be bullish and start to pack my bags in Kadena if it hit $2.59 or in that ballpark would have been $1.43, $1.35, and $1.15. Now, I'm not the type of person that's going to make a video and say, hey, I'm setting DCA targets, or I'm going to be a buyer when price comes down here. The second Kadena hit $2.43, I bought 1,000 coins of Kadena. I was actually watching my own interview when the alert went off and saying that Kadena was down here, and I was sitting there like hemming and hawing. I was like, I just stopped everything and I went and bought some. I sent Doug a video and said, hey, is it bad when I'm watching my own interview and it has me FOMOing into Kadena? Really, I was already planning to buy Kadena at that price point anyways, but it was just funny because I was really watching my video. I was like, man, I want to buy Kadena. Went to go look at the chart at the same time my phone was like, Kadena's at $1.43. I'm like, sweet. So I also said I have 2 other levels where I think price could continue to come down to, right? $1.43, $1.30, $1.35, and $1.15. So I have another limit buy order set at $1.30 or $1.35. I have another one set at $1.15. Those are going to be my 3 targets. Now I think that $1.15 should be the floor, but because this coin is still new, it may come back down a little bit lower. And just in case the market dumps and Bitcoin has a big dumper, I went down and seen this support down here at like 70 cents. I think it was like 65. No, it was 75 cents. And I set another one down here. So I'm going to buy another 1,000 of Kadena if price comes down to 75 cents. But I have 500 here, 500 here, and I have another 1,000 at $1.13. My goal is to try to accumulate about 2,500 coins of Kadena at the very, very least. Why is that? Because I think Kadena is literally reminds me of what I thought about Solana when I first started learning about Solana's technology and how fast and how large that coin can grow. And the fact that the scalability is infinite. As soon as Kadena ecosystem, as soon as they get their DEX developed and they get their own stable coins, once their ecosystem starts to evolve, this coin is going to go to the absolute moon. And at this price point, man, oh man. Okay, so I just did my math a little different. I gotta buy a little bit more. My goal is going to be to accumulate 3,333 coins of Kadena. Because if I take a look at the tokenomics and how much money needs to be invested in this coin for it to reach a price point of $150, it's only 23 billion. So if I take a look at some other coins in the game, other layer 1 blockchains, Ethereum, Bitcoin, Binance, Cardano, Solana, and I talk about their market caps. When Solana had a $50 billion market cap, price point of $210. Cardano right now Cardano's peak market cap was 94 billion and the coin was $2.95. So when we talk about Kadena, I mean, easy could 20x right now and be a price point of $30, and I wouldn't even be surprised in the least bit. That would only mean it would have a market cap of 4.6 billion. So if I'm able to accumulate 3,330 coins of Kadena, and Kadena ends up having a market cap of $23 billion, which is half a Solana, which is pretty much par for the course for layer 1 blockchains as their ecosystems start to evolve. If I was able to accumulate 3,333 coins, and if the price does go to $150, I would have turned roughly 3,500, maybe 4,000 at the max into $500,000 gains. Gains in the least. So before I overtalk it, my price predictions for Kadena are as followed. Based off of current market structure and price predictions and tokenomics and analytics, I think we should see Kadena reach a price point of about $3.59 sometime in the beginning of 22. And if the market does continue to go bullish, I'm calling for a price point blow off altcoin season top of $4.86. Now, if Kadena gets launched onto other exchanges or anything of the sort, or the second they actually launch their DEX and other companies start building on top of Kadena, I think we're going to see Kadena do the same thing that HBAR did. If HBAR put up $5 billion to fund new coins to get built and develop their ecosystem, I think you're going to see Kadena most likely do something similar. And then as soon as they do that, they're going to be getting launched on all these other exchanges and it should snowball. I think that these are very, very realistic targets. But in the back of my head, I'm still thinking that $150 price point for Kadena is something that we're going to see in the next 1 to 2 years. So this is like a 5-year play for me, but as technology evolves and as the cryptocurrency world evolves, it's coins like Kadena that are proof of work that we're not gonna have to worry about having any issues as far as like the SEC and all of that stuff goes. So before I overtalk it, let's dive in. Let's bring Doug onto the show and let's get it. All right, what up YouTube? Welcome back to the channel, another episode of the Crypto Breakdown. I am your host, Ryan Mata. I got special guest, Doug Beardsley, on the line with us right now. We're gonna do an interview and do a little deep dive into the actual tech behind blockchain technology, DeFi. So you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of...
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ryan, for having me. Delighted to be here. I'm Doug Beardsley. I'm Director of Engineering at KADEANA. I've been in the software world my whole career, so going on 20 years now. Found out about crypto back in like 2011 or 12. Didn't really do a whole lot, dabbled a touch, lost money, and then re-found crypto a few years ago when I had the opportunity to join the Kadena team. Just thrilled to be working with a fantastic group of people and having a great time building the future financial system of the world. That's
awesome. What is your exact role?
So I'm Director of Engineering. It's kind of a diverse role. Basically, as I perceive my job, it's to maximize the productivity of our team.
Okay.
And we have an exceptionally productive team, and it kind of depends on what we're working on and what's going on. I still write a decent amount of code myself, but I don't have to write code. If I am not writing code, as long as I'm making the team more productive and so that we can deliver things faster and more efficiently, then that's what I am trying to accomplish with my job.
Awesome. That's awesome, man. What brought you to Kadena? And how do I say, is it Kadena or Kadena? I've heard it both.
It's a spinoff of the Spanish word cadena for chain, but spelled with a C. And so we pronounce it with the Spanish pronunciation, which with the A, Kadena.
Kadena.
Yeah. I first got in touch with the founders of Kadena several years back. Before they founded Kadena, they were working at JP Morgan. I've been involved in the functional programming community in New York for quite some time. And we were hosting a conference, and these guys were doing functional programming at JP Morgan, and they were able to allow us to use the JP Morgan Conference Center for this conference we were hosting. So that was kind of my first connection with Stuart Popejoy. And then a few years later, they were looking for someone for Kadena, and I was available, and just kind of worked out. And so here I am.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Congratulations. That's got to be exciting.
Yeah, thrilled about it.
Are you okay? Would you be interested in diving into actually like layer ones, like the basics? And do you have any...
But the rough idea of a blockchain is that it's a tamper-proof data storage. And I don't think people really realize this enough, especially in the kind of non-tech scene. But this is just about making a storage of information that we can't go back and change later. And so the way that that ends up becoming a currency is we put like an accounting ledger in this storage. And we say, here's an entry that says Alice sent 5 coins to Bob. And once you put that entry in the ledger, blockchains are, the way they work makes it so that no one will be able to go back and change that entry or remove that entry later. It's kind of there, public for the whole world to see. And now the system can go in and say, oh, we see this is the first time ever anyone has ever sent money to Alice. And therefore, Alice's balance, it used to be 0, and now it's 5.
Do that with the hashing, and is it like a Merkle tree structure? Am I saying that right?
Yes. So the hashing and Merkle tree is the way that we make that data store tamper-proof, because they call it proof of work, which means that these computers are doing a lot of work in order to get the data into a form that is valid. And then if you want to go back and change anything, like if Bob wants to go back and say, you know what, I didn't send those 5 coins to Alice, and wants to like take that out, Bob has to repeat all of the work that all of the people participating in the network that are doing hashing have already done. And it's tamper-proof because Bob just won't have enough computing power to be able to do that. He has to compete with all of this computing power all around the world. And that's where you get this idea of what's called a 51% attack, which is if Bob does happen to have more power than the whole rest of the world, then Bob has more than 51%. And then he can he can redo a certain amount of work, and he can create a longer blockchain with more computing power that went into it. And then the system will take his blocks instead of the real blocks. But because Bitcoin is so widespread and there's so many people doing these computing problems all over the world, it's basically infeasible for any single entity to muster enough computing power to be able to beat the whole rest of the world.
I got you. That makes total sense. Now, as far as, can you explain a little bit about what the hash is and how that actually works?
You basically takes any kind of data. A hash function takes any information, and it just does a bunch of computations on it, and out comes one number of a certain length. And it's always the same length number, but it's a really large number. And it has a few properties. You can't go backwards. You can't take that number that it puts out and figure out what the input was. You can't easily find another set of information that gives you the same number as its output. There's a few kind of nerdy math properties that you want these hash functions to have. And we have a bunch of crypto researchers who have spent tons of effort trying to come up with functions that behave this way. But then once we have a function like that, basically what it means at the end of the day is that there's no shortcut to kind of figure out something that hashes to a particular value. You just have to compute the hash. And that's why they call it proof of work.
Okay.
If I show you a hash that has a certain property, and with Bitcoin, the way that people like to explain it in kind of a simplified form is that it has a certain number of zeros at the beginning. In other words, it's less than a certain number. If I show you some information and you hash it, you run this hash function that we've all agreed upon, and if you see that the output hash has like 15 zeros at the beginning, you should go, whoa, that doesn't happen by random chance, because you can't predict what information needs to go in order to get those zeros. And so, seeing the hash have all of those initial zeros is what we call a proof of work. When you see that I had to have had a whole bunch of hash power in order to make that thing happen, because there's no other way to do it except calculating millions and millions and trillions of hashes.
Wow, that's crazy. I'm still learning and like trying to like really like wrap my head around every bit of like the blockchain technology. So I appreciate you coming on the show to break it down and kind of dumb it down for us. We'd like to talk a little bit more about what Kadena is and kind of do a deep dive into your technology and what separates you from the rest. There's a lot of blockchains like emerging, especially, and then you guys are mainly focusing on proof of work too, which is unique.
Correct.
And you guys feel like that Previously, the issues with proof of work were the fact that nobody was really able to figure out how to scale it. So instead of trying to figure out how to scale it, they just started to look at easier solutions, which may or may not be as secure. And proof of work is definitely the most secure. Am I saying that correct?
Yes, I would say that it is the only like truly decentralized consensus system we have. And a lot of people have been investigating proof of stake recently. And I think that they've been doing that because they couldn't figure out how to make proof of work scale. Bitcoin it's a great system. And it was this new technology that we didn't know how to do before. We didn't know how to make a tamper-proof data store. The only way that we could make a data store tamper-proof was to like give a small group of people the password that controlled that data, and we just have to trust that they don't tamper with it. But when this is involving money, we don't really want to trust those people because they can just go in and rewrite the database to say that they have a billion coins or whatever. And that's not really what we want. So blockchains were a genuine technological advance. And the big problem with Bitcoin and Ethereum and all of the other proof of work blockchains available today is that they can't handle a really large number of transactions. Bitcoin can handle roughly 5 transactions per second globally. And Ethereum, I don't know the exact numbers, it's something like 10 to 15 transactions per second globally. Visa and MasterCard, by comparison, process thousands of transactions per second.
Yep.
And this is why we've seen in the last 3 years, the gas prices on Ethereum have been going up hugely. And the transaction prices for Bitcoin have also been going up because so many people want to use this system to transact. It's a hugely valuable thing. It allows someone in one country to send money back home to their family in another country without having a bank account, without having to go and get approval from centralized authorities. You can just like send a message out to the internet that says that you're sending this money, and the money goes. So that's a really, really valuable thing that a lot of people have realized is something useful. But the systems can't handle enough transactions. And therefore, people start to pay more and more money in transaction fees in order to get their transactions in. If you and I both want to put a transaction in, but the system has only room for one of them, what is the system going to do? It's going to put in the one that pays the higher fee. And that's why we see the fees climbing. So scalability is the word that we use in the industry to refer to the ability to handle more and more transactions. Bitcoin, Ethereum, all of the existing proof of work blockchains, they don't scale very well. 5-10 transactions per second, it's just not enough. Yep. Kadena has figured out how to scale proof of work. Other people have been investigating proof of stake, and I can't blame them. If I couldn't figure out how to scale proof of work, I would probably investigate proof of stake too, because figuring out a system that can scale to meet the world's financial needs is like a really powerful thing. So I totally would be doing that. We feel like since we have figured out how to scale proof of work, it's the consensus system that's been around the longest. It's been tested and tried and true. That's where we want to place our bets and where we think the future is.
Now, what is your outlook on, because everybody's going to ask about proof of work and power, and my outlook on that is renewable energy could easily supply, and most people, as far as miners, I know that I was mining Ethereum back in 2016. As a miner, like my thought process always was, the first setup, most likely, you're just getting started out, it's going to be smaller, but as I was scaling and growing, like in the back of my head, it was always like, I got to get this to solar power. Like if I'm going to continue mining like solar or wind, I have to be able to get this at like some type of renewable energy, because you're just literally giving your money away. If you can replace your power source with renewable energy, it's a no-brainer. It's like everything you have is pretty much profit. And I always say like if you build a mining rig and it costs you $2,000, right? Your ROI or break even on that is actually like 6 months, because your half of that's going to go to electricity costs and bills and hardware and everything like that. But after that, you're at broken even. So then if you're mining $300 a month, you're still paying $150 a month in electricity. And I wasn't doing it perfect, right? Like, but that was always my cost. It was like whatever I was making, half of that was going to paying electricity. A majority of them seems like they would be migrating to solar power, and especially like the bigger setup seems like most of them would. But I know everybody's kind of like on the political side of that. So what's your opinion on the whole?
There's a couple of main points. I think that with mining, we don't have to be in any particular location. We just have to have internet access and electricity.
Yep.
So, and I think we have seen this where the industry, the miners go where the cheap power is, and the cheap power is hopefully going to be the renewable power.
Mm-hmm.
If that's not the case, if the dirty power is cheaper than the clean power, then that's maybe a separate problem that needs to be solved, at a different level. It doesn't have anything to do with blockchain. Like the world wants the clean power to be the cheap power, and we have to like try to get there. So that's kind of a separate problem. But mining goes where the power is cheapest. It doesn't have any really significant location constraints. You don't have to be close to port where you can ship your goods out. And so that gives us a lot of flexibility. That gives us a lot of efficiency. And then the other thing that I think gets lost in this conversation a little bit is that, okay, maybe Bitcoin is consuming so much power today, but it doesn't have to consume that amount of power. Way back in the beginning, it consumed far less power. And back then, it could still process the same number of transactions per second. And the fact that it uses more power today, it's not because we're doing more transactions per second. The transactions per second and the power consumption are not related. So whenever people say, oh, it requires so much power per transaction, that's a misnomer. That's not.
The more miners that get involved, right?
The more miners that get involved. And so what we can do is, because we can scale, and our network right now, it has 20 chains, which roughly means that we can handle about 20 times the transaction volume of Bitcoin or Ethereum. If you just kind of assume that all proof of work blockchains are going to be roughly a similar amount of transactions, which I think is a fair assumption, then we're going to be 20 times as much throughput right now because we have 20 chains. But later, the great thing about Kadena is we can grow to more chains in the future as needed.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Because we can grow our transaction capacity, we actually can bring down the amount of power used per transaction. But the other proof of work blockchains that can't expand their transaction capacity, they don't have that luxury. So the more miners that come in, the more electricity per transaction, which is going to be used. So scalability, I think, is actually a really great factor here, because now we're not just stuck at this one, 5 transactions per second or 10 or 15 transactions per second level. We can grow as needed. So if the network grows and more miners come in and start using more power, guess what? We can also grow the chains if we need to handle more transactions. And so like no one can really match power per transaction reduction.
So can you explain that a little bit more? What separates Kadena from the rest? How have you guys figured out how to become scalable when 99% of people could not?
There's 2 kind of factors that are really matter. One is how many transactions can you put into a block? There's a limit. Now, I don't know what that limit is. There's been lots of debates in like the Bitcoin community of whether they should increase the block size limit. But everyone will agree that there's a limit. You can't put infinite number of transactions into a single block.
And why is that?
Because every transaction requires some data. And so eventually the block is going to have so much data in it that you can't send that block all around the world in the amount of time that you need to. So blocks have to be sent, basically communicated all around the world to all of the people who are participating in the network in a reasonably small amount of time. And that amount of time changes depending on different blockchains. You're kind of limited to how many transactions you can put into a block, because each transaction requires some storage. And then you're also limited on how fast you can crank out blocks. Bitcoin is about 1 block every 10 minutes.
Okay.
That was something that Satoshi designed in the beginning, and it's going to be that way for the rest of the time that Bitcoin is running, probably. Ethereum had made some different decisions there. Their block time is, I think, something on the order of like 15 seconds. So a new block gets created every 15 seconds. But again, we can't make that time arbitrarily small. We can't crank out 10 blocks per second. That's just too much, because you have to send that block all around the world, and the speed of light limits how fast those bits can get all around the world. So you can only bring the block time down so much. There's a limit to how low you can have your block time, and there's a limit to how many transactions you can fit into a block. And that means there's a limit to the number of transactions per second that your network can handle for one chain. And the brilliant realization with Kadena is that we can have multiple chains. So imagine you have one Bitcoin network and it does 5 transactions per second. Well, 2 Bitcoin networks can do 10 transactions per second. And 10 Bitcoin networks, kind of all running side by side,
50.
can do 50 transactions per second. Now, it's not quite that easy. Otherwise, other people would have done it.
Yep.
That has 2 problems. One is that you have 10 different currencies, and that's no good. You really need these currencies to be interchangeable. And then the other problem with the naive scaling out to like multiple blockchains is that if they're all proof of work and they're all being mined, a bunch of miners could all jump over to one chain and then they could do a 51% attack on that chain. But since that chain is only 1/10 of the network, that 51% attack would really be 5.1% of the network. We all think it's pretty difficult to get 51% of the network because you'd have to have more computing power than everyone else out there. But it's a lot easier to get 5.1% of the network. So that's definitely a challenge that has to be dealt with. And we've dealt with that. And the way we've dealt with it is by making the chains interlinked.
Is that somewhat like to Polkadot's parachains?
I think it's a little bit different. Let's drop back to 2 chains for a moment. The reason it's called a blockchain is because here's block 0, here's block 1. Block 1 contains inside of it the hash of block 0, which goes back to that hash function that we were talking about earlier. So you take all the information here, hash it up, you get one number, and that number gets included in this block. And then the hash of block 1 gets included in block 2. And so that's why they call it a blockchain, because you can kind of think of it as like an arrow that going from block 1 to block 2. It's saying, hey, I have this information about the previous block.
Yep.
And that way, if you change information in block 0, that changes the hash. And then that hash needs to be changed in block 1, and it cascades and it affects all of the blocks that come after it. So now if we have 2 blockchains, each one contains the hash of the previous chain. But what if we also have the hash of this block be over here and the hash of this block be over here? So now the chains are linked together, and we call that chain web. It's the chain web protocol, which is the protocol that we used to structure the Kadena blockchain. And that actually solves both of the problems that I mentioned. It solves the 5.1% attack problem, because now if you want to attack this block's hash happens over here and over here. So you have to have hash power in across both of the chains. And because of the way, and this gets into a bit more technical details that I won't go into, but the fact that we have these hashes of the other chains, that allows us to transfer coins from one chain to another.
That's so cool. Do you have any illustrations that we could pull up by chance?
I do. If you go to our YouTube channel, the Kadena.io YouTube channel, we have a video called
Welcome to Kadena, a breakthrough in blockchain security and scalability. Kadena's Chain Web Protocol is a public proof-of-work blockchain that builds upon the proven design of Bitcoin. Let's start with the simple architecture of Bitcoin and build our way up towards Kadena. In Bitcoin, there is one chain. As each new block is mined, it points to the hash of the previous block in the chain. To create a new block, miners around the world race to solve a cryptographic math problem. This design, called proof of work, was the world's first proven method for processing secure and decentralized transactions without requiring that participants be known. Now imagine a two-chain version of Bitcoin. When a new block is mined on either chain, that new block references the previous block on its own chain, in addition to the previous block on its peer chain. This design doubles throughput and increases security, since it contains proofs from not one, but two other previous valid chains. This idea of braiding two chains together for increased security first came from early Bitcoin forums, and it was referred to as Betacoin or block rope. Taking this idea one step further, we can now see a three-chain configuration. Here we are braiding together three Bitcoin-like chains to further improve security and scalability. Notice that there are now many more reference points, as each newly mined block points to its own previous block, in addition to that of all their peer chains. If we continue to add more chains, it requires a more efficient base graph to propagate information across the network without sending so many reference point messages. KADEANA's breakthrough comes by taking this early idea of Bitcoin braiding and scaling it dramatically. We do so by leveraging graph theory. Instead of an arbitrary communication structure, as can be found in some DAG-based platforms, KADEANA uses a fixed graph structure to optimize for propagating information across the network. In the case of this 10-chain structure, KADEANA uses the Peterson graph, so that each chain only needs to communicate with 3 peer chains instead of all 9 of the others. Once those 3 peer chains communicate with their own 3 peers, the entire network is linked in only 2 communication jumps. Taking this idea one layer further, KADEANA continues to scale throughput and security in the network by braiding 20 chains together. Leveraging a fixed graph approach is unique to KADEANA. It allows the platform to guarantee the overall performance, as opposed to unfixed or DAG-based approaches, which cannot make any guarantees. KADEANA accomplishes this all while preserving the key promises of Bitcoin: openness, ownerlessness, and true decentralization. Now you've seen how KADEANA's blockchain has been uniquely built for security and scalability. This is a simple animation to illustrate how the Chainweb protocol evolves from Bitcoin to the highly scalable and highly secure design of KADEANA. To learn more about KADEANA, explore the resources available at kadeana.io.
Unlike Ethereum and Bitcoin, where every time another participant joins the network and starts adding transactions to the network technically slows down, correct?
No, it doesn't, because blocks Bitcoin is designed so that a block gets produced every 10 minutes.
Yep.
And it puts in as many transactions into that block as possible. And if there are too many transactions, then those transactions have to wait. It doesn't actually slow down the blocks because they are going to get produced every 10 minutes.
But I mean, transaction time slows down. Like if I wanted to pay for a cup of coffee,
because you have to. So Bitcoin has a block time of 10 minutes, yep. And they say that you need to wait for 6 blocks before you can be confident that your transaction is, they call it, confirmed.
Yep.
And so 10 minutes times 6 blocks equals 1 hour.
So why does the network get slower the busier it becomes?
It doesn't get slower. It means it only gets slower if the blocks can't hold any more transactions. So let's just say, for example, that the blocks can hold a certain number of transactions and they're not full. Then when you come along and say, hey, I want to put my transaction in, the block isn't full. There's more room in there. And so your transaction will go into the next block, or it should be able to. But the reason some people experience these things, so Bitcoin, it's never going to be faster than 6 blocks in order to, or you could say, oh, I don't want to wait for 6 blocks. I want to only wait for 3 blocks. Mm-hmm. But that's still going to be 30 minutes. You can never wait less than 10 minutes or so, because 1 block every 10 minutes, right? So that's just fixed because of Bitcoin's design. Block time of 10 minutes, you're never going to be able to buy groceries with Bitcoin, layer 1, because your transaction is going to take 10 minutes to get into the next block at least. Yep. And then everyone agrees you should wait a little while. Yep. And, so you're going to have to wait for more. Now, Ethereum sped this up. Ethereum has a block time of 15 seconds. And like this whole idea of confirmation time of saying, oh, after 6 blocks, your transaction is confirmed, that's kind of a fallacy. because there's nothing magical about 6 blocks. 6 blocks is just the rule of thumb that people use to simplify the question of how long should I wait. The real reality of the situation is you should wait longer depending on how valuable your transaction is. If I'm sending you $1 million, you might want to wait longer than 6 blocks before giving me the keys to your house. Because $1 million, I might be incentivized to spend $900,000 to reverse that transaction.
Got you. Makes sense.
Right.
Yep.
So it totally depends on the value of your transaction, and that kind of determines how long you should wait before you're confident that the transaction went in. But if the blocks are full, if they can't fit more transactions in the block, then your transaction has to get in line. And it will go to the front of the line if you pay a higher fee. And so these networks, they've gotten popular, which is great. But that means that the rich people are the ones who can participate because they can afford to pay more for their transactions. Like $20 for me to send you $1 million, no big deal. $20 for, you know, a day laborer to send money back home to their family, that might be a lot. So yeah, this notion of slower, more transactions doesn't change how fast blocks get produced. So it doesn't slow down the blockchain, but if you have too many transactions, you might have to get in line.
Okay.
If you're not willing to pay more to get to the front of the line.
Got you. Now, with Kadena, is this the type of blockchain where technically the more people that get involved, the more secure the network becomes and the faster the network becomes? So
it does become more secure as more people get involved, and it becomes more secure as we add chains. So when we get to the point where the existing 20 chains are full and we can't put more transactions in them, then we can add new chains, and we can set it up so that those new chains are also interlinked with the existing chains, so that now we have more transaction capacity. And the new transactions that were waiting in line before, they can go over here into the new chains potentially.
Is there one main chain, or are they all equal?
They're all equal.
And they're all going to be Kadena chains, or they can be any other coin?
They're all Kadena chains.
Okay, so if I wanted to launch my own token on your platform because you guys have smart contracts, is that possible?
Yes, it is.
Now,
we have smart contracts. You can launch your own token. And as of today, we have 20 chains, 0 through 19. And you can pick any of those chains to put your token on. You could look at the blockchain and you can say, oh, you know, chain 17, no one's using chain 17, or no one's using chain 13 because people think that's an unlucky number.
Yep.
You could put your token on chain 13 and only chain 13 if you wanted to. You could also put your token on all of the chains, and then people could go wherever is the least congested chain at any given time. So there's still some challenges to be worked out. There's no free lunch. There's no way to just like snap your fingers and magically make all the hard problems easy. Yep. But what Kadena provides is the raw materials so that people can build out systems that can scale and they can do it in whatever way it makes sense for the type of system that they're building.
Okay. And you guys have your own smart contract language, correct? And what is that called?
It's called PACT, P-A-C-T.
PACT. And now is PACT, when they say, how do I say it? Is it the Ethereum Virtual Learning Machine?
Ethereum Virtual Machine, EVM.
EVM, the Ethereum EVM. Now, how does your guys' smart contract language interact with that? And can you explain more about like what that actually is? And does Kadena have anything similar in the works?
Absolutely. So the EVM it's kind of designed to be like a computer. And that's what the words virtual machine mean. It's a term in the computing industry that just means we kind of designed this system that's like a computer, but it's not actually a computer. So physical computers, they have certain instructions that the chip understands. This number means we want to add. This number means we want to subtract. It's not very human understandable. It's kind of miserable to program in, but that's the way the computer works. And then we've developed languages that kind of generate this low-level machine code. The EVM is a virtual machine. It's like reinventing a chip, but a chip that you can program with software, very similar to how chips actually work. And so there's opcodes that a certain number represents this kind of instruction for the Ethereum virtual machine. And then the Ethereum software runs those instructions as smart contracts. But no one wants to write code in these inscrutable numbers. And so Ethereum has the Solidity programming language, which you write it in human readable form, and then you compile it into this EVM bytecode, which is just numbers that are not very understandable to humans. And then they put that EVM bytecode onto the blockchain. And so a smart contract, it's really just a tamper-proof computer program. It's a computer program that has been put into the blockchain. And because it's in the blockchain and the blockchain is tamper-proof, now that computer program is there and no one can mess with it. And now we can use it in different ways depending on what it does and how we want to use it. But the key with Ethereum is you take human readable code, you translate it into machine readable code, i.e. EVM bytecode, and then that's what goes on the blockchain, the machine readable code. It was a brilliant idea. Like nobody in the first few years of Bitcoin before Ethereum came along, nobody would have foreseen where that was going. It was just fantastically brilliant concept that we're still figuring out. It was a number of people was involved in the early days. I think Gavin Woods did a lot of the coding. It was a group collaboration amongst a number of the original Ethereum folks, and fantastically brilliant idea. And I totally understand why they did it the way they did it. In retrospect, though, when we look back, it seems to me that because we have this tamper-proof storage, it's like a permanent record, like the Library of Congress. Of like, oh, hey, you can put your computer program in the Library of Congress and they preserve it for all time, right? What would you rather have in the Library of Congress? Some machine code that is very difficult to understand, or some human readable code that is easy to understand?
For sure, human.
You probably want that in retrospect to be human readable. And so Pact is a language that we designed specifically for the needs of blockchains and dealing with the types of things that you want to deal with in blockchains. You want to have things like multi-sig. You want to have ways of verifying that your code does what you think it does. Pact was designed with all of this stuff in mind, and it's human readable. And the Kadena blockchain is built so that you put human readable Pact code in the blockchain. So the permanent record is human readable. Whereas with Ethereum, the permanent record is machine readable. And you can't really go back and take the machine code and like reconstruct what the human readable code was. And we've had attacks in recent months that dealt with this issue. There were attacks where someone put up a smart contract and then they put up the code for that smart contract, but the code that they put up wasn't the same as the actual code that they used. That problem can't happen with Pact, because with Pact, you're putting the human readable code in the blockchain.
Yes.
And therefore, it's there for everyone to scrutinize, and not everyone cares, but there's plenty of computer programmers out there who do care and do have the skills to be able to analyze this stuff. And it's much more transparent.
That's
and
awesome.
So the permanent record is a human readable permanent record. And Kadena has made all kinds of design decisions that are certainly debatable. But I would say that this particular decision is the least debatable decision we've made.
It sounds like it right off. I mean, just
putting human readable code on this tamper-proof permanent record just seems like, in retrospect, obviously the right way to go.
How is it possible to get that much information, that much technology onto a blockchain? Is that all done with the hash, because the hash can be pretty much infinite in size? And that I was meaning like in general, like isn't like all blockchains, like how are these blockchains taking this much information and basically putting it onto a blockchain that's there forever, and then every time a block is mined, they're re-verifying all of the previous transactions?
They don't re-verify all of the previous. When you first run your node, and this happens with Bitcoin, it happens with Ethereum, it happens with all blockchains that are out there. You have to download all of the block history, and then if you're doing it in the most, like a full node is a term that people use, then your software is going to download everything and it's going to validate everything. But you only have to do that once. And then once you've got all of that data, every time a new block comes in, you only have to validate this new block. And then you know that all the other stuff you've got in your blockchain storage has been validated already. And then you just say, ooh, let me check the last block. And let me look at the hash, and let me make sure that that hash matches the hash that's in this new block.
Got you. That makes sense. That just helped me understand that so much better. Now I understand a little bit more about the hash. You're only verifying once you actually get synced up to the network for that first time. Then all you have to do is verify that the previous hash was correct, because if that hash was correct, that means everything behind it was correct.
Everything behind, exactly. And with a smart contract blockchain, there's more data in there. There's more state that has to be validated, but it's really just, you have the current snapshot of what the current state of this blockchain is, and then you just validate this new block and all of the transactions that are in it. Now, to your question about storage and how much data this is, it's definitely a challenge. The fact of the matter is that computers can store immense amount of information. The watch on your wrist or the amount of data that can be stored in a phone is so huge. Like the mind just can't really adequately comprehend how much data can be put in there. And so blockchain data consumption is definitely going to be a challenge going forward. And it's going to be more of a challenge for blockchains that are more scalable. You're going to have to, like, you can't store all of the whole world's transactions on a watch.
Yep.
That's just not going to be a feasible thing. And so while I respect the idea behind some of these projects that say, oh yeah, we want to make small and storable on small devices, maybe we can do that today, but that idea is not going to scale into the far future for sure. Yep. It's going to start to take, look at Google. Google's whole idea was, oh, we want to organize the world's information. Well, back when they started in like the late 90s, that was a lot more feasible. And you could store a snapshot of most of the data on the web in their data centers. And guess what? As the internet has grown, Google's had to scale out their data centers. And so the same thing will probably happen for any blockchain out there that is truly globally scalable.
Okay, that totally makes sense, man.
There's no free lunch.
I get it.
We can solve some hard technical problems, but there's no way to just like magically snap our fingers and have like your watch can store all the transactions in the world and you can transact in like half a second. There are fundamental laws of physics that limit things, and engineering is really all about trying to find creative ways to deal with those.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Now, I guess we do it like Ethereum, and then Ethereum has Uniswap as their decentralized or their DEX. Will Kadena have the same setup where they will? And have you guys launched your smart contracts and that's all deployed right now, or is this all still?
So smart contracts launched way back in the beginning. After we did a small phased rollout, like we started out with just mining, and then we turned on full smart contracts a couple of months later, just to kind of like give us a little time period to work out the kinks, and that ended up being a really good choice. But our smart contracts have been running since January of 2020, so more than a year and a half now. So yes, we do have smart contracts, and there is an upcoming DEX project built on our smart contract platform. At the beginning of this year, we kicked off a bounty program for people to come in and try to find bugs in our DEX smart contract. And it was successful. We actually had someone find a bug, later this year. I think it was in like June or July. They found a bug that was able to let them drain the money, and it was on mainnet, so it was running on our live network, but it was using these fake tokens that we made redeemable for a real KDA, and then Kadena put up real KDA as the bounty. And someone found a vulnerability, which was fantastic. That's exactly why you do these kinds of bug finding incentives.
Yep.
And we fixed it. And then I actually just last week I gave a talk at the Mainnet conference in New York City, and I talked about how, in addition to fixing the bug, we also made some improvements to Pact, our smart contract language, so that we can prevent this whole entire class of bugs in the future.
Oh,
and so,
wow.
yeah. This is the great thing about Pact and the design decisions that we made. It has a very powerful formal verification system, which is made possible by the fact that we made some simplifying design decisions. This is why we think it's really important to have a language that was designed for the purpose of smart contracts. So we didn't just fix the bug. We fixed the bug and came up with a way to prevent all of these kinds of problems in the future, which I think is what you really have to do.
Absolutely. Is this guy an employee at Kadena now?
He's in very close contact with the team. He got paid out our bug bounty. He's a Kadena ambassador. We appreciate everyone who wants to come in and take a look at our blockchain and kick the tires and help us make it better. And this guy has been a great asset. And then as soon as we found it, I think it was about 2 weeks later, we had a fix for the problem and the future problems of that are similar.
That's huge. Now, I might be saying this wrong, but it's just kind of like the impression that I got from like when I did the little bit of research. I just recently found out about you guys, and it seemed like you guys, can you talk a little bit about your team? Are some of those people from JP Morgan, or is that just a little bit of the story? Because it seems like you guys, from an outside perspective, it looks like you guys are creating a blockchain specifically with banking and institutional investors, and like that seems like the road that you guys are headed. Is that?
So yes, I think we definitely have that slant. So the two co-founders, they had been at the JP Morgan blockchain group. They wrote Juno, JP Morgan's early blockchain system, and then they eventually decided that it would be better for them to spin out their own company to do Kadena. And so we have this very solid, large amounts of banking experience. We understand financial systems. We understand deploying real production live systems that have to work well and have to be effective. Also, one of the co-founders used to work at the SEC in the SEC's blockchain group. And we have a great story with respect to compliance. And as we saw in the last weeks and month or two with the Congress stuff about in the infrastructure bill and the crypto provisions that a lot of people were concerned about, Congress basically said crypto proof of work is fine, proof of stake, a little bit more questionable. And guess what? We predicted that. We saw that coming. I think we're very well positioned to be able to work with the financial institutions to actually get blockchains used in realistic, real world financial settings. And at the same time, we've just been completely by the book with respect to compliance. And I think we're in a great position there as well. So we have a great background of our team. It's just a phenomenal team. It's just a pleasure to work with these folks.
I can imagine, man. Having that SEC knowledge that's worth its weight in gold right there, because they're coming at crypto from every angle. And it seems like what makes proof of stake versus proof of work. And I want to say that you guys did something unique with how you guys did your, was it an ICO or what? How did you guys originally launch?
We got seed funding. I actually wasn't around in the really early days. I think there was some seed funding, there were some SAFT rounds, but we were always very, very good in the compliance department. And I think we're in a fantastic situation there. Now we have our blockchain out there actually running, and people are starting to use it, and it's proof of work. I think the big thing that Congress, at least my big takeaway from the events of a few weeks ago with the infrastructure bill, is that Congress may end up saying that proof of stake is not decentralized. And it kind of isn't. The validators in the proof of stake system, they determine what goes into the network. How is that different from what the bankers do in the existing banking system today? It's pretty similar. It's not truly decentralized because you can't come in and necessarily buy in if the original validators don't want to sell you their tokens. You can never become, controlling and help to decide what the network is doing. That can be kept amongst a fixed group of people. And that is not the case with proof of work. With proof of work, anyone can turn on some hash power and start mining and contributing to the network in that way. And I can't stop you from setting up computing hardware to do this particular hashing problem that allows you to contribute to the network. So that, I think, is the fundamental difference.
Now, do you guys have a max supply?
We do. There's a couple of blog posts that we put out on Kadena's tokenomics. If you just Google for Kadena Tokenomics, you'll find them. Our max supply is 1 billion KDA, and actually minus 10 million. We accidentally burned 10 million KDA when we launched. It was a little bit of an oversight, but not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. We burned Kadena's KDA, so no problem there. But yeah, there will never be more than 1 billion KDA in existence, and those get mined over 100 or 120 year period, something really long.
You guys have halvings as well?
We do not have halvings where it really abruptly changes. The tokenomics post, it's a nice smooth curve, and the miner rewards adjust roughly every month, and then they decrease just by small amounts. Yep. So there's never this really big change where all of a sudden miners are making half the money they used to. It's a much more smooth payout, and it's over a really long period of time. We're here to build a long-term financial system that can power significant infrastructure well into the future. We're here for the long game, and we're here to do it right. And that's why we designed our token economics the way we did.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool. Is there going to ever be any like token reductions or any burn mechanisms put in place?
We don't have any burn mechanisms in at the moment. We'll see how things go. We did take some community feedback back towards the beginning of this year. People were saying that our inflation rate was too high, which is kind of just because we're a young project.
Absolutely.
When the project is new, lots of coins are going to be coming into existence, and so your inflation rate is kind of unavoidably high. But we took feedback from the community that said, hey, it's problematic and it makes people not want to participate. And so what we did is we didn't burn anything, but we took Kadena's share, which is already a very modest share. It's described in our post. Kadena only has 30% of the total coins, ever. Yep. And we extended that out an extra 5 years. So our coins are going to come out of lockup over 5 additional years. And so it's 10 years instead of 5.
Yep.
And we wanted to signal to the community that we heard their feedback, and we wanted to give people confidence that
that's huge.
We're not here for a get rich quick scheme. We're here to build like serious financial infrastructure.
It's coins like that make me think about the analogy. If you own property in Manhattan, right? When would be a good time to sell that property? Never, right? Because you're holding on to something that's going to continue to grow in value. And it makes me think, like, when I hear you guys talk and I see your team and everything that you guys are building, rug pull didn't even come to my mind. When I stumbled across your project and I started looking into it, I was like, wow, how am I just hearing about this project? Because you guys, I think, are going to be one of the bigger forces to reckon with in a very short period of time. Especially when you guys get your DEX launched. Can you tell me anything about the name of the company, or is there anything been leaked on that DEX?
If you want to Google for things, it's called KADEX. So you also might find something called Kadena Swap. Kadena Swap is the name that we use to refer to the smart contracts, the code that goes on the blockchain, which we we worked on. We kind of took Uniswap. Our co-founder basically over a weekend ported Uniswap code into Pact. Yep. And created Kadena Swap. And then we did this bounty program this year that I mentioned before. And so Kadena Swap is the contracts on-chain infrastructure, and then going to have the actual exchange with people that are operating it, and the front end, that's going to probably be called KADEX, KADDEX.
KADDEX?
Yes. KADEX did a raise earlier this year, and I don't remember off the top of my head. It was very successful. I think they raised something on the order of like 5 or 10 million. And so there's clearly a lot of demand out there for this stuff. And we're really excited about that. We're partnering with TokenSoft to get bridges onto the Kadena blockchain. So then you can bridge in BTC and probably other tokens. The goal here is that because Kadena is a scalable blockchain, we want to be the bridge of choice. People want to move tokens around and they don't want to do it on a centralized exchange. They want to do it on a decentralized exchange. You can move your tokens into Kadena and now you'll be able to trade for low transaction fees. Scalability is the way to get low transaction fees.
And what are your guys' transaction fees?
Oh, right now they're exceptionally low. They're less than 1 penny per transfer.
Wow.
Yeah, they're very, very low. And as
wow,
everyone agrees, even Vitalik had a tweet saying that the solution to the gas problem is scalability. And because we have scalability, we shouldn't ever see these gas fees go up to really, really significant levels. If the blocks are getting filled up and we can't handle more transactions, guess what? We're going to add more chains, and then we will have more capacity, and then the gas fees should be able to go down. Now, there will absolutely be challenges with that, but we've already demonstrated our ability to scale. When we launched with 10 chains, and a little over a year ago, in August of last year, we forked to 20 chains, and we doubled our blockchain capacity while we were running in mainnet. So this is real. We are not just saying we think we can scale, we've actually scaled it already.
Wow. Can you explain a little bit more about when people say mainnet? When I look on CoinMarketCal and I see upcoming events for blockchains, I see mainnet 1.0, mainnet 2.0, and then I see Uniswap V1, V2, V3. Can the community understand more what that actually means? And when you say mainnet, what do you mean by mainnet? And I guess there's testnet would be obviously your testnet version, but how are people using testnet and then all of a sudden like they hard fork and then all of a sudden it's mainnet? I guess I don't fully understand what that actually means.
So the main use of that term is kind of testnet versus mainnet. Testnet is where you do testing. You probably have much larger numbers of coins. Maybe you even have the ability to kind of like mint new coins. On our testnet, we have billions and billions and billions of coins because we want to be able to like give them to people for testing. You know, if you need to restart testnet at some point in the future, you can do that. If you want to have a separate testnet in the future, you can do that. Ethereum has multiple testnets. And the word mainnet just kind of means this is the real thing. You can't manufacture new KDA on mainnet. It adheres to our token economics. There's never going to be more than 1 billion of them out there. It's kind of hard to test things because you need real money on mainnet. Yep. And so that's the reason for testnets. That's really the main use of that term. And so when I say mainnet, I'm usually saying this is our real blockchain that's running with real KDA currency on the line. I was just spoke at this Masari mainnet conference last week. You know, they kind of took the term and used it for a conference, which is cool, but that's like a separate thing. And it's important to not get confused there. I think it's a great name, but that's a conference and not really the general term that people usually use.
When I saw that, I thought I thought Masari was launching their own blockchain. I was like, oh, I think that actually might be where I found you guys at. Okay. Masari. I think you guys are on their one of the top asset lists or up and comers or something like that on that. That's
good to know.
That company has a lot going on as far as research and the tools and resources that they have there.
Yeah, they put on a great conference in New York last week, and it was really fun for me to be there and be able to present.
That's awesome. So what else can you tell us about the future of Kadena?
Oh, let's see.
What are some big events? I mean, I think the whole DeFi space. Do you have a date on when the KDEX is going to be?
We don't have a date yet. These kinds of things, they involve lots of different entities. Like, it doesn't make sense to launch a DEX if you don't have tokens that you can trade on that DEX.
Mm-hmm.
So these are kind of dependent on a lot of different factors. We have to make sure that we've partnered, and we've got our TokenSoft partnership up and running, and that people can bring in BTC and bridge that into Kadena and whatever other tokens we launch with before it really makes sense to have a DEX, because then people will just be like, the DEX is there, but what good is it? The DEX does exist on mainnet today. It allows you to trade these test tokens, which was how we ran our bounty program.
Yep.
So the code is out there and you can use it, but we haven't gotten all of the other pieces of the puzzle in place yet, so that it's a fully functioning, like real live DEX. Yeah. So where we're headed is kind of, first of all, we launched and we got things out there and we got our smart contract system working. Then we proved that we can scale our system a year ago when we forked to 20 chains. And now it's really about building out the ecosystem and the community. When we looked around at the DeFi ecosystem, it seemed like wrapped tokens are really important, stable coins, really important component of the ecosystem, because that allows people to like use fiat on your blockchain. And now on Kadena, you'll be able to do that for low transaction fees. And then building a DEX, these are kind of like the building blocks of your DeFi system. You need to have different stable coins. You need to have a way to exchange them on chain. And then I don't know exactly where things will go. This industry moves so quickly. It's almost impossible to predict. Like I said, would the Bitcoin people have been able to predict the rise of Ethereum? I don't think anyone saw that coming. It was just too innovative and out of the box of an idea that had ramifications that no one could even foresee.
Yep.
And so I don't really know where things are going to go next, but I can imagine, if I look around at the Ethereum DeFi ecosystem, I can imagine a variety of other DeFi components getting built out. Lending platforms seem like a pretty obvious one. Things like NFT infrastructure. We have announced that we have an upcoming NFT project, and we think that there's some really interesting possibilities there. We're excited to be working on that. The possibilities are limited only by your imagination, basically.
For sure. That's crazy. So how long do you think it would take to get the whole DeFi ecosystem? Is that something that's like a year-long goal, or is it a couple years or months?
I'm not
going to hold you to it. So
I don't even think you can put a time on this. Just like look back at how the Ethereum DeFi ecosystem evolved. Ethereum comes out, all kinds of cool things. All of a sudden, CryptoKitties is on the scene. Oh wow, this is a new idea. And then people dive in and explore that. And then Uniswap comes out, and like now there's a way of doing decentralized exchanges. I have no idea. Like I said, we're in this for the long term. We're in here to build new and innovative infrastructure for years to come. I don't think there's any particular stopping point or any particular we're done and now we're just going to sit back. We're always going to be looking at where the industry is and where things seem to be going, and trying to make sure that you can build those things on Kadena more effectively, with fewer bugs, and with scalability and low transaction fees for the foreseeable future.
Now, when you guys have new coins building on top of your ecosystem, so you guys are the layer one, correct? You guys are a layer one blockchain. Anybody that wants to build on top, right? They would be a layer two.
Yes, that is certainly one thing. Other people, CryptoKitties is maybe an application built on top. So you can maybe build all kinds of things on top that aren't necessarily layer twos. but there's certainly the possibility to build layer 2 infrastructure on top. And we are really well suited there as well, because Kadena also has private blockchain, or also known as permissioned blockchain software called Kuro, which we originally had been a closed source thing that we were planning on doing enterprise sales for. It was very targeted at the needs of large enterprises. Kuro is a fast finality, BFT consensus, permissioned blockchain. And guess what? It also uses Pact. So the interoperability is great between Kuro and Kadena, the public blockchain. And so you can use Kuro to build layer 2 solutions. We have a video, I can get you the link afterwards, that demonstrates how you can use Kuro, and you can kind of take coins on the Kadena public blockchain, you can lock them up, and then another thing can kind of make those coins available on this Kuro private blockchain or layer 2 blockchain, and then you can transact using our same tools instantly. And that's where you can think of getting things like being able to actually buy coffee with cryptocurrency. 30 seconds, a minute is maybe a little bit too long to wait for the transaction to confirm while you're standing in line at the grocery store or Starbucks. But you can, if you lock it up in like a layer 2 solution, then you have possibilities of making those transactions much quicker. And now we can reach a much, much, much broader market.
That's because technically that layer 2 would be able to reach finality in seconds, right?
Or like even less than a second potentially, depending on the system. Yeah.
Oh man, see, I'm learning so much, and the industry's changing so fast. It's hard for me to keep up. So thank you for coming onto the show. Honestly, man, it's been a pleasure.
Oh, my
This is
pleasure.
probably one of my favorite interviews that I've done yet. This is probably one of the most exciting interviews I've done yet. I probably shouldn't say favorite.
Thanks a lot. This has been really enjoyable.
Wow, man, I'm learning so much. I feel like I could keep asking question after question. I don't know if like how many I should go through, because can you explain a little bit more about the difference between a private and a public blockchain?
Basically, a public blockchain means anyone can join and participate. A private blockchain has limited number of participants.
What do you mean by participants?
So the people running the nodes that are like sending the transactions, communicating the transactions back and forth, and determining what the like current state of the world is. So the big example is like, imagine you have several big banks and they want to be able to trade money and exchange money between each other, but they don't necessarily trust each other, right? If you've got your bank and I've got my bank, there's a really strong incentive for me to say, oh, didn't you get that 5 billion? I sent it. And you're like, no, I don't have record. I sent it. I definitely sent it. Like, I don't owe you 5 billion. You've got it already. And, if your bookkeeping isn't all squared away, you can have these kinds of disputes. And so a private blockchain is something where the participants are limited. Like, you have to be allowed into the network. There's tons of places where you might want to use this, like this banking example I give. Maybe you have 3, 4, 5 banks and they all want to exchange money and they don't necessarily trust each other, but they can set up their computers. Maybe each of them have 3 or 5 or some number of nodes that are running around the world. And then they, so you've got like maybe 5 banks, 25 nodes in total. And if you really want to try to cheat someone, guess what? You've got to attack a number of the other nodes that are participating, and in order to kind of fool everyone into thinking, oh yeah, I did already send that 5 billion. And so, yeah, private blockchain is something where the participants are limited, and you can use it to come to a consensus over whatever it is, whatever kinds of applications you might be able to think up.
Okay. When you say private blockchain, what is the difference between a token like Monero is one of the only like main privacy coins I know of?
So that's a different sense of the word private.
That's what I wanted to clear that up. That's what I was wondering if that's.
Monero is a public blockchain, but it is designed to make the transactions more private so that you're not just putting out there that Doug sent to Josh, X number of coins. You want that information to be private, but you still want people to be able to verify that you actually have the coins that you're sending. I think there's some really interesting challenges there. We may go there at some point in the future, but we wanted to just kind of start with something that was a lot more well understood, and then we can expand there as needed.
Yeah, that seems like it makes you a target for the SEC almost when you're a
little bit. Yeah.
Nobody wants that. The government doesn't want to not know where your money is going when you're sending it places. So
right. It's hard enough to build this kind of financial infrastructure without like putting a target on your back. And so we wanted to focus on things that were clear value and that we thought we could get regulatory, compliance with.
For sure, for sure. How many coins have built on your ecosystem? Is there a way for us to actually view your ecosystem and see what coins are actually building?
Yes, if you download our wallet, Chainweaver, that's from our website. Chainweaver has a place where you can look at all of the smart contracts that are on the blockchain. And then you can go through there, and because of what I mentioned earlier, the code is on the blockchain. Yep. You can just say, hey, I see this contract called Scrum Coin. Oh, what's this about? And then you can actually look at the code and you can examine it and you can see what's going on. Some people have already put some contracts on there. We have a token called ANADOC, which one of our community members created early on, just to kind of play with things. There's a lot of activity. We're working to build out our bridges with these wrapped tokens. I anticipate seeing more and more activity as the ecosystem starts to fill out.
Awesome. Now, can you explain a little bit about what a bridge actually is? If I wanted to build a bridge between Kadena and Ethereum, right? I would need a way for Kadena to communicate with Ethereum. And then you take Ethereum tokens, they get wrapped and they're locked. And then in return, you're trading that for Kadena. I guess there's some part about that I'm just not fully comprehending.
So you have a pretty good picture. I think the easiest way to explain it is with what I call a centralized bridge or a centralized wrapped token. And this is pretty much the way USDT works, which is send me some dollars. Like maybe it's just in person. Like you come to me, say, hey, Doug, I'd like to get some USDT. You give me $1,000 and I have this contract on, in the case of USDT, it's on the Ethereum blockchain. And I say, okay, here's 1,000 USDT. The agreement is kind of, I pledge to everybody, hey, you just gave me that $1,000. I'm going to keep that in the bank. I'm going to keep that in my reserves. And then you can give me back some USDT and I'll give you back the dollars for it. I, as the centralized person running this thing, will make sure that there's always the amount of reserves in the bank so that we can always pay you out. And then basically this USDT, it's just a token. But because I set up this agreement and because you trust me, if you do trust me, you can always send me USD and I'll give you USDT, and you can send me USDT and I'll give you back those USD. Therefore, USDT has a value of $1. Now that's with a fiat currency, but you can do the exact same thing with virtual currencies. You can say, hey, give me 1 Bitcoin and I'll give you 1 KBTC, and vice versa. And then this token called KBTC, the value of it should match the value of Bitcoin because they directly match each other. That's the core idea of how this stuff works. Because you can create tokens and you can control their supply, you can set things up in a way that these tokens track the value of other assets. Now, a lot of people don't like the idea that you're going to be trusting some entity to hold these reserves. And you hear people talking about, oh, does USDT actually have all the reserves or don't they? Maybe you can solve that problem by having auditors come in and verify these things. So there's a lot of people that like the idea of a decentralized stablecoin. And I'm not going to get into the details there because it gets to be quite a bit more involved of how do you create a decentralized stablecoin. The whole MakerDAO project with their DAI, they have an approach for this where you kind of lock up assets that make it so that you have something to lose, so that you're going to have an incentive to be honest. And if you're not honest, and if someone catches you, then they'll like take away / some of the funds that you've locked up. So there's lots of different variations on the approaches, but fundamentally they all kind of boil down to the same thing. There's some way of creating a token on one blockchain that kind of tracks the value of a token on another blockchain, and often they will involve locking up those tokens in some way, shape, or form, and constructing things in a way that this token over here matches some value somewhere else.
That makes sense, man. It's like the whole tether FUD. I mean, it's pretty scary. I think it's the only thing that right now could completely cripple the crypto industry. I don't know how we've given that much trust to one single company and allowed them to run rampant without audits, without anything. Like, you look at the charts and you look at when it just happened, when they just printed another 2 billion tether, and then all of a sudden it was like a few days later, Bitcoin price skyrockets. It's like they're printing their own tether without backing it by anything. They're taking that tether, they're going and buying Bitcoin, they're driving the market up, and then when Bitcoin hits a peak, they sell all their Bitcoin, crash the market down. And I wouldn't even put it past them that they're not even putting the profits that they take and replacing the fake money that they printed. It just seems like tethers, or maybe they're doing it whenever it gets questionable, like they're about to get audited, and then they quote unquote don't have that money in reserves. It's like they're printing tether, driving the price of Bitcoin up, cashing out the Bitcoin, dropping the market, and then they're putting that money back in the bank real quick and saying, oh, it was always there.
Yeah, I really don't know. I
can't comment on it.
Don't follow it super closely, so I can't give an opinion on what I think is going on there. But what you just described is the reason why people kind of like the idea of a decentralized bridge more than a centralized bridge. So you don't have to trust a single entity.
I think you guys should go that way. Just
and we're absolutely working on that. We've put a lot of time and thought into building a decentralized bridge approach. That's really what we're headed towards as well, because we think that's an important thing to have.
It sounds like you guys have the team and the resources and ability to do something pretty impressive. So I'm so excited to see how your ecosystem evolves. And if you guys ever want to come on the show for another follow-up interview, I would love to have you guys.
Absolutely. We can. I think we would love to, and maybe we can get some of our other team members on. And
yeah, that'd be fun. We could do a group one too if you guys wanted to. I think I can have like 8 people in here at one time. So like a little confusing,
cool, yeah.
But we could definitely bring some other people on the team if any of your other team members want to. If you guys ever have any upcoming events, are you guys going to any major events or any in the United States, or do you guys have any events planned? Or
I'm focused on the engineering side, so I'm not up to speed on our calendar. I can connect you with some people offline and get some of that other info.
Yeah, for sure. If you guys are ever going to any events, let me know. I'm going to be trying to travel over the next year, I think, and try to make it to as many big events and conventions as I can. And like I said, I'm a professional videographer and photographer, so I'm going to be traveling with all my gear. So maybe if you guys are ever in person, we could set up an in-person interview at one of these events or something like that. Your team members are going to be there or whatever. So
that sounds awesome. So
is there anything else you'd like? Cause I know it's going to be long, so I feel like I haven't had the opportunity to do too many of these interviews were this good for this long, but I don't know what the attention span is going to be to everybody. So I kind of don't want to pack too much into this. This has been such a great interview.
This was super fun conversation. I think you covered the vast majority of things. I don't have anything.
You want to just touch up a little bit more on your wallet? I think that's the only thing we didn't really dive too much into. Can you explain a little bit about, so every main blockchain needs its own wallet to store all of the technical native assets that were built on that blockchain, correct?
Mm-hmm. The way that assets are stored is there's a public and private key pair. Your public key historically is kind of like your username, and your private key, you never close that. You sign transactions with the private key, but the private key stays private. And you put the signature of that transaction out there. You actually don't need a wallet per se to transact on a blockchain. All you need to be able to do is to sign transactions. And now, what is a wallet? A wallet is some software that will store your public and private keys. In this case, we use the ED25519 keys. And so your private key, once you have your private key, you can just calculate what your public key is. Mm-hmm. And so the wallet stores your private key and then makes it easier for you to sign transactions. But you don't even have to use our wallet Chainweaver. You can just store private keys on an offline computer in cold storage, and then you can use some small, low-level, gnarly tools that we have to sign transactions with them if you really, really want to be super secure and keep your keys in cold storage. But our wallet allows you to do basic transfers. It allows you to explore the blockchain and look at smart contracts that are there. It allows you to deploy new smart contracts to the blockchain. So it's kind of more of a power user wallet. It's a little bit more like an IDE in some ways, because we felt like all of these bits of functionality were kind of related, and they were useful, and people needed them. So a lot of people say, oh, Chainweaver is kind of the more power user, harder to use wallet. We have another wallet, which is called Zelcore, that has a mobile app and has an easier to use system for just doing simple coin transfers. But some people actually have given us feedback that Chainweaver is not so hard to use. They like it. It just depends on who you are and what your level of interest is. We're always focused on getting our wallet to be more usable and a better experience. We just put out a new release of Chainweaver, which fixes some bugs. Pretty soon, we're probably going to put out a web version of Chainweaver, so then you won't have to install it. So that should make things more accessible. We are working with various partners and community members on other wallet projects. Ultimately, one organization can't build all of this infrastructure by itself. Right. We took the focus, we're the only ones that are going to build the powerful thing. So we wanted to focus a little bit more specifically on building the powerful things that could leverage Kadena's full features. So we have native support for multisig, and Chainweaver supports that. Chainweaver, you can sign transactions with keys that Chainweaver doesn't know about. It has the ability to do that as well. So you can just keep your keys offline and you paste things into Chainweaver, and Chainweaver can help you deal with transactions. So it's a very powerful wallet, and we're always working towards making more user-friendly features and making things more accessible.
Why do I have to have a different wallet for like Solana, and then a different wallet for Cardano, and then a different wallet for all these different coins? Is it so hard just to have one wallet that holds all coins? I guess I don't understand that part.
So the reason MetaMask is so popular is because it operates on the Ethereum ecosystem, and it can store any kind of an ERC20 token. And There's a lot of them. And so MetaMask gets you a lot there. But when you're dealing with different layer ones, Solana, Cardano, Kadena, they usually have different ways of doing things. Some of them are EVM compatible, in which case maybe you can use MetaMask. We, as I've described in other points in this talk, we felt like things really needed to be rethought from the ground up, and we needed to make different design decisions in order to build an ecosystem that would take us farther into the future. That's why you can't use most other wallets with Kadena. They haven't been set up to talk to the Kadena blockchain in the ways that Kadena requires. Each different project has their own ways. We are developing standards. There's something called Wallet Connect out there that I think is supposed to really help make dApp and wallet communication easier and more generic. I think for a while, we're going to see a lot of innovation, especially in layer one blockchains. People are going to have different ways. They're going to be exploring different ideas, and it's just going to require different wallet software in order to work with those things. Maybe somewhere down the road, we'll start to see some convergence and some like wallet standards get developed, but that's not where we're at as an industry right now.
Man, thank you so much, Doug. I honestly, man, this is a blast. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
I want you guys to promote your social media. Now, do you personally also have your own social media that you'd like anybody to follow you on, or any places that if maybe people want to contact you, is that something you'd want to promote, or just for?
Yeah, obviously Kadena, Kadena.io is our website. We're Kadena.io on Twitter. My personal Twitter account for Kadena is called at Kadena Eng for Director of Engineering. And the name is Crypto Doug. I really try to focus on that Twitter account with tweeting about educational things. I'm trying to demystify complex blockchain topics for my followers. And so I really try to maintain a really strong focus on just like tech and making easy to understand explanations for how various things in blockchain tech work. So by all means, follow me on Twitter. We have some of our other team, our co-founder, Stuart Popejoy. He has a Twitter account that's really informational. Join our Discord channel, which you can find on our website as well, kadena.io. And yeah, would love to interact with the community more.
Awesome, great. Well, I'll have you send me over links to everything that you want me to share, and then I'll post them down in the description, so that way if you guys are watching this video, you guys can easily gain access to all the links that Doug was talking about and all of their social media links as well. So man, just honored. Thank you so much. Tell your team I said I thank you for letting you come on the show, and I appreciate it big time, and hopefully we'll link up again.
Thanks so much. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, Doug. Have a great day.
Yep. Bye.